So International Women's Space was founded in 2012 in the occupied school, Gerd-Hauptmann-Schule in Olausstraße. If anyone was around in Kreuzberg at that time, hopefully you remember, it started a protest march from Bavaria with over 600 refugees and asylum seekers coming to Berlin to protest the treatment of asylum seekers and all the restrictions on their lives here. And they occupied Oranienplatz first, but obviously then it got cold, winter was coming, and they found out that this school was empty, so they occupied this empty school building. And within a week, some of the women who were part of the occupation decided they wanted to make a space that was just for women, and that's where they founded Women's Space. One of the floors or one of the wings of the school was solely taken over by them, and they remained there until the summer of 2014. And yeah, it became a space to connect, to work with the women that were in the space, living in the school. They had lawyer sessions, so every week lawyers would come in and do workshops with the women to work on their specific cases, but also just so that they could learn about their rights here in Germany and then recognize if their rights were being trampled upon. And then, over the first book that we wrote was published in 2015, and a lot of the stories in this book are about women who were involved in the occupation, in the school, in the founding as well. So it's very linked to Kreuzberg and this area. And that came after meeting all the women. The members just decided they wanted to, tell these stories. Often when you hear of stories of refugees, it's often men. So they wanted to make, what's not so readily seen in the media very present. And since then, so in 2018, we also moved into a new space in Kreuzberg. So for about 4 years, we were working between different spaces, so didn't actually have a space, even though we kept the name International Women's Space. But yeah, now we have in the Manteufelstraße. Lucy will explain a bit more about some of our more recent work, but I'll just introduce our two other books. This one, We Exist, We Are Here, was published in 2018. And the stories of these women mostly came in that kind of wave between 2015 and a bit later. So they're often women that were maybe politically involved in their own countries before coming here, whereas the first book is some women had been here for 10 years, 8 years before they were then involved with us in writing the book. And the other one, Als ich nach Deutschland kam, is only in German. The other two are both in English and German, and the third language, if the stories were told in a third language. This one is the result of a conference that we did in 2017 with 6 panel discussions with women, multiple generations of women who've come to Germany, also some women who were born here but have so-called migration background in German, or as they were saying, migration foreground is one of the discussions. But this was after doing this and looking at kind of the stories of women who'd arrived more recently, we really wanted to connect it. So people who came in the 60s, 70s as refugees or as guest workers, or also Vertragsarbeiter in East Germany. So there's also 2 discussions that look at the differences of migration and refugee women in East and West Germany. Yeah.
Now I want to introduce you to Lucy. She's a very active member as well in International Women's Space, and she will introduce about the recent work of refugee women in International Women's Space and also talk about the Corona Lager reports.
Hello, everyone. Once again, my name is Lucy. I'm here representing the break isolation group from the International Women's Space. I'll just give you an overview of who we are at IVS, what we do. And as Helen has said, just highlight a bit of some activities that we have been actively involved in the last 1 year or so. So the Break Isolation Group, or BIG, at International Women's Space, is a group of self-organized refugee women that was formed in February 2019. as a result of the quest to share their own experiences as refugees in Germany in their own voices. The main objective of the group is to reach out to other women who are in Germany as asylum seekers, usually accommodated in the so-called Heims in the different parts of Berlin and Brandenburg. The location of these accommodations is purposefully structured by the state, far away, closed off from the Berlin central infrastructure, and therefore access to vital information in regards to the asylum process is extremely limited. Isolated in such remote accommodation with minimal or no connection to reliable sources of information, in a time where there is a great need to be well informed, these women are not only denied this, but their basic human rights are being violated. Most of these accommodations have very weak internet, if they have access at all, and women staying there cannot afford to buy data for their phones with the money they receive from the state. The big women, the BIG women, continually seek to break this form of isolation by visiting these places to inform and encourage through sharing their personal experiences and to educate and exchange information to empower, to build the capacity of these women, and to ultimately self-organize and seek or demand their basic and fundamental human rights. Through these visits, the group strengthens links and enhances connections to other organizations and self-organized groups in Berlin that also provide different services to the refugees and migrants. And we do this, for example, by distributing printed materials and information sheets from these partners translated in different languages. The measures being taken to slow the spread of the coronavirus have further restricted access to these accommodation spaces. But International Women's Space, and specifically the refugee women of the Break Isolation Group, continue to reach out to these women in this period. Women who are not only isolated and locked up, but also lack access to the ever-evolving and rapidly emerging information about the ongoing pandemic. It can be very challenging for the women in these accommodations spaces, and this situation can easily aggravate psychological and physical health issues that were already present following their personal reasons of flight and search for protection and safe haven in Germany. In an effort to continue the work of sharing experiences and reaching out to engaging the women, the BIG women have initiated the Corona Lager reports. These are recording audio messages on their current situations in their different accommodation spaces, and they also invite other women to share their experiences too. You can be able to listen to these voices or reports by visiting the International Women's Space website. The messages or the reports are in English, and they're also in German. In general, what we are saying is that these reports bring into perspective what exactly goes into these in these accommodation spaces. Some of the information that you will get from these reports is mainly what you cannot even find out here, because these are women who are sharing their own experiences from within, and they're able to tell us what exactly is going on in these particular accommodation spaces, and especially during this particular time when we are talking about Corona. When you listen to some of these voices or the reports from the website, you will realize that there's so much information that we don't get out here. In some of these accommodation spaces, they do not have even transport, or the buses have been stopped. So they are not able to leave the accommodation spaces. And these are women mostly who have even young children. And therefore, I know DAE has organized something in form of donations that will go a long way in getting some food for these women who cannot leave the accommodation spaces, who have very limited information on what exactly is going out here, as I've mentioned, because they do not even have access to internet. And we have also mentioned that these particular accommodation spaces are so far, very far, and sometimes even reaching out to these women is not as easy. But we, as the BIG group from the International Women's Space, we are doing that and going beyond the challenges of reaching out to these accommodation spaces by allowing them send us the reports from these accommodation spaces. So thank you.
Yes, thank you, Lucy, for your strong talk, and thank you, Helen, for introducing International Women's Space. Now, we would like to share the one episode of the Corona Lager report. Maybe you can have an idea of what's going on.
Hi, there's something going on here that people don't understand. I think there is no more hygiene in politics. As in, this quarantine is not anymore quarantine, is, I think, taking advantage of the quarantine, this pandemic time. I have been in Wusterhausen, met people, women, with children, pregnant women, being shuffled from one lager to another, and within the lager, you're even shuffled from one room to another. After the 14 days, they tell you they're taking you somewhere, of which people don't know where they go. Some people have been forced to sign a letter that they want to go back freely back to their countries. This is unbelievable. There are things being implemented and they are not in the law. It's a strategy to take advantage of this pandemic time. These shuffling people from one lager to another, there are even people, I'm shocked. I met a woman from Hennigsdorf, a pregnant woman. She came to Norrupin. She don't know why she's there. She was just told to come there. After 2 weeks, she was given a room within Fusterhausen. After then, we don't know where she was taken. You just wake up and they tell you you're going somewhere else, of which people have no idea where they are taking people. And then they're squeezing people in the rooms. It's not even quarantine anymore. It looks like a small jail. That's what is going on here. It's very, very shocking. The people are getting worried every day. So in this time of quarantine, they're doing something. If you don't want to go and you don't want to collaborate with them, they give you between 50 to 90 euro. They give you a key to go in and out. As in, when you go out, you give the key to the security. When you come in, you have to take your key so that they monitor when you're going in and out. In one lager in European, they give you a special card with your photo, of which you have to give to the security. There's only one entrance. And when you come back, you show to them that you're back. Something is fishy here about it. And then they are stressing people as in, if you don't collaborate, you don't get money. If you don't collaborate, you don't have a place to stay. If you don't collaborate, they don't prolong your stay. If you don't, there is no address stamped on your permission to stay here. And they don't allow you to integrate or work. It's they block you. And then they give you residence flex. All these things are happening for the last 2 or 3 months. Nobody understands. I think there is a sickness that is Messiah complex. As in, if you don't worship them, you don't get what you want. This is, to me, some kind of a modernized qualification with no queries. It's very shocking, especially for pregnant women and women with children being shuffled from one lager to another, and they don't know about tomorrow. The question is, integration and working is a problem. Doing nothing is also a problem. Who is fooling who here is the question. There's an alarm here. The rate at which people are losing patients is getting higher than the pandemic itself. I think something should be done.
That is just one of the reports that you will find in our website. And as you can hear, there's a lot of confusion even among the women themselves who are in these accommodation spaces. There seems to be a little bit of lack of proper communication channels between maybe the administration of the accommodation spaces and the refugees themselves. And therefore, it leaves them in a situation where confusion is even more and more every other day. You can hear from this report, this woman talking about people being moved from one room to the other, from one accommodation space to the other, without further explanations. This, again, leaves these refugees and women in a situation that is even more complex, and especially during this particular point time when we have corona. All the preventive measures in relation to corona and the movements is no longer an issue to the administration at these particular spaces. And therefore, just like I said from the beginning, that some of this information you will get from this report is not available out here when we discuss and talk about corona, and when we discuss and talk about the refugees and the challenges they go through on a daily basis in these accommodation spaces. So for me, it's quite informative, and it's also quite good that they are able to share these experiences with us out here, so that at least we have a way of understanding exactly what happens in these spaces. Yeah.
Yes, thank you. Actually, we wanted to invite International Women's Space because as an Asian myself, during the Corona situation, it was not an easy life before, but it was even harsher during the Corona situation. But after I was listening to the Corona Lago reports, it was another dimension. So I wanted to bring it up to this space because I know we want to show solidarity somehow. So thank you for sharing the Lago reports. And if you want to listen to more of them, we have the name cards up here, so you can take it. There's the website there, so you have the Lago reports there. And my question is, so with this Corona Lago reports, how far do you want to reach, and how did you come up with this report in the BIG group?
Before Corona came into perspective, we used to go physically to these hives. We would make some contacts with the refugee women who are in these particular accommodation spaces, and through them we would go in as visitors. Because again, when it comes to visits and visitors in these spaces, it's not as easy. So we would use a contact woman in this particular space for us to be able to visit. But since these physical visits are no longer possible with the corona, we thought, why not still continue with a way of reaching out to these women? Because they need to get information. We also need to get information on what is happening. And this is how we came up with this idea that we could be able to continue collecting the information from these women, even if we don't go there physically. We are still able to have a touch with them. They still feel that they are not alone. There's some people out here who have gone through this process and have a thought about them. And for us, this has been very empowering to the women, because they come back and tell us, by sharing these reports, what they have, the courage they have been able to get, the confidence, and even the fact that they are able to access even more information when they share these reports with IVS. So it just came in as a result of this, the corona and the fact that we couldn't be able to go to these spaces anymore.
Thank you. Before I move on with my other questions to both of you, I would like to open it up to you all. If you have any questions, or if you have any opinions or ideas of showing solidarity with anything, or if you have any ideas of bringing up your own projects to ask for solidarity, I think we are welcoming for them. Do you have any questions? Okay, not now, maybe. Yeah, so for me, after I've been in Berlin for 2.5 years, and then since I've lived here, I kind of got a new definition of the term space. Like space was just a physical space for me before, but not, after I came here, space was more emotional, and there were different spaces. Even if I'm there at the same time, there's different. It's different for me according to who was there, what topic we were talking about. So I learned about the concept of safer space by heart after I came here. And that's why when I first heard of International Women's Space, I really wanted to join because it's international, it's about women, and it's a space. So I wanted to be in this space where I would definitely feel safer and have some kind of connection, and I don't have to explain so much about myself. But I have never asked any of you what international space or what space means to you while you're having your activism within these wonderful women.
You can start.
Well, yeah, like I said, when it was founded, it was with a desire to create a space only for women within the occupation, because the women who had been involved in the march to Berlin and also were there living in the occupation realized how much they were still experiencing sexism from within the refugee community and wanted a safe space away from men, that they could be on their own and know that in that space, in that floor, in the building, they would be protected, so to speak. And I think, I wasn't involved at the beginning. I got involved in 2015 when the first book came out. But those years when we didn't have a physical space either were also a real struggle in terms of, obviously we carried on and kept on going and did a little bit, but things like the big group was a wish for a long time to be able to provide a space only for refugee women, which is now every Friday afternoon in the space. And we couldn't do that if we didn't have our own space. But in terms of creating spaces, that's something we talk about often. So like the conference, creating a space that was, again, only for women to come and talk about these topics. We got a lot of good feedback on that. And people were amazed, people who'd been working on issues of racism, migration in Germany for years and had never had a space that was only for women to talk about this. And they were very thankful and said, I didn't know I was waiting for this, but I was, when they experienced what it was like. There was over 250 women every day for 2 days.
Maybe just to add on to what Helena said, for me, I would say the space is about empowerment. It's about being safe, feeling safe and protected, and having my capacity built as a woman. I just want to share with you how I came into IVS. That was only last year, I think in November. And I came in as a very shaky person. I was not able to speak. And I had, a lot of trauma, and I had gone through so much. But the moment I got into the space, I found women who shared with me their own experiences, and therefore they made me feel more stronger. Today I can be able to speak about myself and speak on behalf of the others too. So for me, it has been a journey, and I believe that even for the other women who come into this space, feel the same and even more. Yeah.
So talking about food, what I really like I didn't join from the beginning either. I was not in Berlin at that time even. But what I really like about International Women's Space meetings are there's always good food. We always cook together. We don't know which dishes from where or whatever, but it's just on the table. Everyone cooks and we just eat them. It feels like we're like a family. So I think it really links to today's event even. Like with migration, we can't take food out from migration or our narrative, because food is another way of our narrative, I think, even though you can't speak through food, but there's a lot to talk about food. Well, as you all know, our festival is called Mygration, My Narrative, and we want to stress that we are talking in our narrative. So I would like to ask you, Lucy, the last question. For you, what does speaking in your own narrative mean?
I would say it's about bringing out exactly what is in me as Lucy. Expressing myself the way I feel quite comfortable, the way I understand myself, because no one else can speak about Lucy better than the Lucy herself. So for me, when you talk about my narrative, it's about my internalized story about myself and speaking it in a way that I'm able to, present it to someone else in the best way, because I know myself better. So I'm able to tell about myself all around without necessarily having to figure out or even make a guess of what I'm going to present about myself.